Alright, Decepticons, we are just about to finish filming Dark of the Moon. Now, did everyone get their scripts? Yup.
Yep.
Yes, but I haven't read mine just yet. Well, let's read them together. It says I get my spine ripped off by Optimus Prime.
I get my head shut off by Bumblebee.
Mate, I get killed by humans. What the f is this sh?
What about you, Starscream? It says I get killed by Sam Wiki. Come on, let's ditch this loser. Oh, I can't stand this. Michael B., you and I are gonna have a word with my lawyers.
A few inches later.
Yep, I see. That's pretty bad. It sucks. Yes, I know, right? Can we do something about that? Maybe I can arrange you a better deal. Oh, really? Yes, bingo. Now let's think about some ideas. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Cause I see you coming back as a head. Hello everyone, welcome back to Wasted Potential, everyone's favorite most inconsistent series on my channel, both in terms of views and both in terms of upload schedule. But now we're back, and we're gonna be talking about Starscream. Now, Starscream is the second in command of the Decepticons, and Megatron's favorite to beat up in the movies. Now, Starscream is a fan favorite character. He's very popular and appears in almost every single continuity that there is about Transformers. But the movie Starscream does get quite a lot of flack for not being a faithful portrayal of everyone's favorite backstabber. In this video, much like every other video in the Wasted Potential playlist, I'll be talking about how Starscream was portrayed in the movies, in other expanded materials, how will I have handled him, and then I'm gonna rank him in comparison to everyone else I cover in this series to see who had the biggest wasted potential of them all. Now, Starscream is a very popular character. I got requested, and for some reason I never felt like covering him, mostly because the movie Starscream is just kind of boring to me. I know a lot of people like his design for actually depicting his slimy, cowardice persona quite well. And while that is the case, in my opinion, I don't like this design at all. I know the Dorito memes are like overdone, but I really don't like the design. I really don't like the Dorito star shape. And Starscream to me is one of the most forgettable characters in the movies. So that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to make a video about him. But here we are, making fun of everyone's favorite or least favorite Dorito depending on your point of view. Sit back, relax, and enjoy as we talk about Starscream's wasted potential. In Transformers 2007, Starscream was laying in wait at a US air base for most of the movie, waiting for Frenzy to report the location of the Allspark. Once he did, him and the rest of the Decepticons set out to recover the Allspark that was located in Hoover Dam, and also Megatron. Starscream was the first to arrive. He disables the hydroelectric power plant attached to the dam, and then Frenzy manages to free Megatron. The two of them meet and exchange some words, only for Megatron to ignore all of this and ask him where the cube is. We then cut back to Mission City, as Starscream is the first to arrive, and the first thing he does is bombard the humans and the Autobots with his jet missiles, destroying Bumblebee's legs in the process. And after that, he doesn't do it again, because reasons? Oh, no, seriously, there's no good reason for Starscream not to just, circle back around and keep on bombarding them with missiles. I mean, what are these guys gonna do? Shoot at the sky? The next appearance of Starscream will be a little bit later in the battle when Sam's carrying the Allspark. Starscream attempts to get it, but then he gets intercepted by Ironhide and Ratchet. He gets a brief fight with them, and shortly thereafter, he just leaves. He just leaves! Like, Ratchet and Ironhide are right there. They're pretty injured. I'm pretty sure he could get them, considering that Starscream is not as injured as these two. His next appearance in the movie will be when Megatron's trying to retrieve the Allspark from Sam. Both of them are on top of a building, and he just observes Megatron and Sam have a conversation. And much later in the battle, when actual F-22 Raptors from the US Air Force arrive, Starscream, actually disguised as one of them, gets behind them and starts attacking them. But then Starscream pulled the knockout and didn't want to get his precious finish ruined, so he left the battle shortly thereafter.
I have always admired your lustrous finish.
Then we end the movie with Starscream leaving the planet, which leads us to the sequel, Revenge of the Fallen. In Revenge of the Fallen, on the Nemesis starship, engineering a new army for the Decepticons to use. After Soundwave's plan of reviving Megatron turned out, and Megatron came back to the Nemesis, Starscream had a very awkward meeting with his former boss in which he had to explain that he was now in charge and that he accidentally left Megatron and the other Decepticons to die on Earth. He then was present in Megatron and the Fallen's conversation about how they needed to get more energon and that there was another source of energon they could use on the planet to fuel their armies and save their species. Later in the movie, Starscream aided in Sam Witwicky's capture alongside Grinder and Megatron. He watched as Megatron and Scalpel threatened to dissect Sam for information. Optimus and Bumblebee then arrived to the rescue. Bumblebee fought Starscream for a short time before fleeing. And then he later rendezvoused with Megatron in the forest so him, Megatron and Grinder could gang up on Optimus. However, this genuine brilliant strategy was mildly successful since apparently Starscream couldn't fight for shit and got wrecked by Optimus Prime. And Grinder was kinda just, I don't know, standing there for most of the fight, leaving Megatron to do most of the work. Megatron was able to sneak attack Optimus Prime and kill him. The three then attempted to capture Sam once again, but the rest of the Autobots showed up, forcing Megatron and Starscream to retreat. Starscream and Megatron later flew to the top of a New York City skyscraper, where Megatron took the chance to abuse Starscream some more, and then declaring that the Decepticons will no longer be hiding and they will be out in the public. Later in the movie, when Soundwave found out that Sam was in Egypt, Starscream flew there to investigate, locating him, Bumblebee, Skids, and Mufflap. And Starscream then tried to kill the group, but they were too fast for him and they got away. Despite Starscream being a jet, he then flies by to look for them, and he manages to spot the Nest team. He releases an electromagnetic pulse that took out the humans' communication so they can't call for reinforcements, but while doing so he saw Prime's body. He then informed Megatron about what was happening, and then Megatron ordered an assault against the human forces to begin. Starscream then led a group of Constructicons and other Decepticons to look for Sam amidst the still just buildings with little to no success. He managed to spot them, but they easily got away again, so the man had to transform to get a better view of them, because, you know, looking all the way up from the sky for a mere human insect is so much better than being on the ground and actually looking for them up close and personal. But surprisingly enough, this 2000 IQ brain move actually paid off and Starscream managed to spot them. He then told Rampage to quote-unquote to spring the trap and hold Sam's parents for ransom. But just as Sam was about to hand in the Matrix, Bumblebee shows up, kills Rampage and Ravage, and Starscream just watches from the sky, not doing anything. We then later see him joining the other Decepticons in fighting Nest. He's not seen anywhere else till the end of the movie, where he's right next to a wounded Megatron after he and the Fallen got their asses beat up by Optimus Prime, who had taken Jetfire's parts to get a power-up. Starscream advises Masters that they should flee, and that cowards do survive after all. Which leads us to Dark of the Moon. Starscream arrives at Decepticon High Command in Africa, where the first thing he did was mocked Megatron. Megatron then told him to shut up, and he watched as Soundwave and Laserbeak reported in to Megatron that the Autobots have discovered the Ark that was landed on the moon. Later, he's seen in Washington DC as Sentinel Prime summoned a Decepticon army to Earth by a space bridge. Starscream was surprised to learn the Sentinel had been leaving to defect to the Decepticons all those years ago. He noted the brilliance of Megatron's scheme and asked if Sentinel was now his partner, and Megatron retorted that Sentinel was his greatest triumph, which kinda sounds a little gay, but okay, and explained that they had intended to meet up on Earth all those years ago. Later, the Autobots were forced by the humans into exile aboard the Santium, and while they were leaving, Starscream was laying in waiting for the right moment to strike at Earth's atmosphere. He swooped in for the kill, destroying the ship and presumably killing all the Autobots on board. Which, let's be honest here, with the exception of the forest fight, this is probably the most effort Starscream has put into anything so far. After the Autobots were presumed dead, the Decepticons basically took over Chicago and just started exterminating all the humans there, and stood by his leader as they worked on their plan to bring Cybertron itself to Earth's atmosphere by a Sentinel Prime space bridge. When the Autobots and the US military started trying to retake back Chicago and destroy the pillars, Starscream attacked the B-22 Ospreys that were carrying Lennox's team as they tried to sneak into Chicago using wingsuits. Although Starscream took out most of their aircraft, most of the Nest soldiers were still able to infiltrate Chicago by a wingsuit. This just goes to show that
Can't do anything right, Starscream!
later in the Battle of Chicago, Starscream took several potshots at Eb's team, separating Sam and Carly from the soldiers. Starscream mocked and toyed with the human while he was trying to kill him. But then Sam used a grappling hook that was given to him by Q and fired it onto Starscream's optic. Now, Starscream, like the perfectly sane, highly advanced, intelligent alien that he is, instead of calmly staying still, cutting the wire with his sharp fingers or his chainsaw, he decided the best course of action was to flail around his hands in the air like he just doesn't care, causing Sam to fly through a building window. While doing this, he got ambushed by Legnos's team, but as he tried to return fire, Sam jumped onto his shoulder and stabbed a boomstick into his other eye, making him go fully blind. It was at this moment that Starscream began losing it, screaming in pain
like a little bitch.
as he tried scraping it out of his eyes on the ground. Even though, Starscream, you do know both of your eyes have been popped out. It's not that there's something covering them, it's that they're not there. Honestly, man, what are you doing? Lennox attempted to free Sam from the grappling wire. The boomstick then exploded, blowing up Starscream's head and his chest. Somehow, even though the boomstick was on his head. Big logic, am I right? His lifeless body then fell to the ground in pieces, while Lennox and Sam were saved from the fall by Bumblebee. Honestly, Starscream went out like such a bitch. It's so embarrassing seeing that all over again. Like, listen, man, I know it hurts, okay? I know it hurts, but stand still, cut the wire, you still have one good eye, and replacing Transformers body parts is not a difficult thing. Work through the pain. In Age of Extinction, 5 years later after the Battle of Chicago, Starscream was listed as deceased by the CIA Task Force Cemetery When, only getting a cameo in this movie. Which leads us to his last appearance, being in The Last Night. Starscream's head had been recovered and rebuilt, ending up all the way in Buffalo, New York. It ended up among a number of items peddled by Day Trader to the Autobots at Cade Yeager's junkyard. And later in the movie, when the Decepticons raided the junkyard, Megatron found Starscream's head, where he reminisced that he didn't have his sweet old punching bag to beat up and abuse anymore. Megatron commented to his former friend? Co-worker? What is Starscream to Megatron? And he wished that his old treacherous friend could see the end. Oh, I get it, it's cause he's blind. And shortly thereafter, Megatron was ambushed by Hound and engaged into a small fight with him, dropping Starscream's head, leaving it in the junkyard. And yeah, that's pretty much it for Starscream in the movies. I never really liked Starscream in the movies. I know there's a lot of people that do. For some reason, even Combat Cam likes him and ranked Starscream's design pretty high up in his, ranking old Starscream from Transformers video. Which I can't stand behind that opinion. I don't like the Starscream at all. I think he's horrible. What gets me the most is how weird Starscream is in these movies. In the first movie, Starscream is like, he shows up, leaves, shows up, leaves, and it's like done for no reason. He could have gotten the Allspark in so many occasions, he could have killed the Autobots in so many occasions, but he doesn't. In Revenge of the Fallen, he's just woefully incompetent. I don't think he was able to land a single good hit on Optimus. Even Grindor got a good shot at Optimus, but all he did was upgrade from Megatron's punching bag to Optimus Prime's punching bag. And later in the movie, he was unable to capture Sam, even though he had several good moments in which he could have totally swooped in and just grab him. And in Dark of the Moon, his death was just so embarrassing and easy to avoid. There was no reason for Starscream to die that way. And in Age of Extinction and The Last Night, he just got a cameo, which it was fine, I guess. But can you see why I don't like this character very much? I think it's not an issue about Starscream being, a coward. I think it's an issue about Starscream being lazy and incompetent. And may I remind you, this is the second in command of the Decepticons, the scary alien invaders that are supposed to be so technologically advanced and so powerful they can bring humanity to its darkest day. Yeah, Starscream is not threatening at all. He sucks. I don't get why people like him. But yeah, that's how he was handled in the movies. I'm gonna talk about how he was handled in comics and other tie-in media, because there's actually quite a bit to talk about here. Now, something you need to keep in mind is that a lot of the tie-in material I'll be covering, like the IDW comics, Cyber missions, and the novels, do all kind of take place in chronological order, like with the movies. Like, some of these stories happen in between certain movies, some events are meant to explain some of the stuff that happens in the movies themselves. And while for the most part you can kind of consider these to be non-canon, I think they're fun and they're pretty neat, and it's my channel, so I'll be covering them anyways. Deal with it! So we start off with Foundation, and by the way, a lot of these comics intercept, so I'm just gonna tell you the general narrative of the IDW comics in regards to Starscream. So many years before the Civil War broke out on Cybertron, Starscream was basically a school teacher. Yep, he was guarding hatchlings in a school trip when they were attacked by a subterranean monster, aka the Driller, which was later retained by Shockwave. He was saved by Megatron and Shockwave, and that was the start of a beautiful relationship. At some point, he joined Megatron's defense force, a group whose task was protecting Cybertron from any hostile invaders. However, that all changed when the Fire Nation I'm just kidding. That all changed when the Nebulans attacked. These aliens were out for the Allspark, and they wreaked havoc in many of Cybertron's cities. Megatron, under the influence of a mysterious relic found outside Sim4, convinced several Cybertronians to wage a vengeful war against these aliens, in which Starscream rallied behind at Tripticon City. Starscream took part in the killing of these aliens alongside Megatron and the other Decepticons, and eventually became one of Megatron's most trusted lieutenants and one of his most fearsome fighters. Where was all that fierceness during the movie Starscream, and when you were losing your mind over just having your eyes popped out? Eventually, slowly over time, Megatron started getting more political power among Cybertron's defense force, and eventually ordered Starscream to arrest Optimus Prime and his loyalists, in which Starscream tried and lost. And here begins our downward spiral for Starscream. While the assassination plot failed, Megatron used Starscream's big blunder to his advantage and said that his forces were attacked by Optimus Prime's group of rebellious adversaries. It was during this time in which Megatron also founded the Decepticons. During the war, Starscream blindly followed Megatron's orders, murdering those who did not bow to his lord's will, even those who did not choose sides. During the Autobot assault on Sim4 Temple, Starscream noticed Alita 1 reaching the Allspark and activating Sentinel Prime's torch. He pursued her, but she escaped into the tunnels. This was the final battle on Cybertron, and it's actually the event we see in Dark of the Moon. Sentinel Prime was also escaping Cybertron. He was carrying a powerful relic that could have helped the Autobots win the war. But unfortunately, Starscream missed the last week's Decepticon Illuminati meeting, and he was not filled in the plan that Sentinel Prime was actually gonna betray the Autobots and work for the Decepticons in order to give Cybertron a new energy source. So despite Megatron literally telling Starscream to stop pursuing the Ark and to do not attack it, Starscream disobeyed this command and blew the Ark right out of the sky. And in the subsequent explosion, the Ark disappeared, and Sentinel Prime and the cargo was carrying was believed lost forever. Of course, this is not what happened in Dark of the Moon. It turns out that Sentinel Prime used the pillars to like teleport himself somewhere far away. But still, it was this massive blunder that made Megatron really hate Starscream. Shortly after the disappearance of Sentinel Prime, Starscream was inside Megatron's citadel when Optimus Prime and the remaining Autobots launched an all-out assault against Megatron's fortress to get revenge for the death of Sentinel Prime. Him and Shockwave fought against Ironhide, while Optimus Prime engaged Megatron. When they were just about to kill Ironhide, Optimus Prime showed up at the last second and saved Ironhide, leaving Starscream and Shockwave unconscious. Much later after this attack, Starscream was leading an assault at Tiger Pack City. When Blackout arrived with reinforcements, they both witnessed the launch of the Allspark into space, a desperate gambit by the Autobots, and then immediately Starscream and Blackout began to bicker over their next move. Seeing Megatron leave the planet in pursuit of the Allspark, Starscream decided they will also go after him. Optimus Prime and his Autobots aboard the Ark. This is not the same arc from Dark of the Moon, this is a totally different arc, there's many arcs, yeah I know, it's very confusing. followed Megatron in pursuit of the Allspark. Starscream led his own ship, the Nemesis, into a journey to chase them and prevent them from getting the Allspark. Unfortunately for them, as they were following the Allspark's trace, it turns out that it was an Autobot trap, and they were crippled by concussion pulse weapons from the Ark, throwing them off the chase. Humiliated, Starscream and his crew limped back home for repairs, and then later took off into space once again to pursue the Allspark and the Autobots. Which leads us to the events of the novels. After Megatron leaves Cybertron, Starscream basically takes command of the Decepticons, and him alongside the 2007 Decepticons basically go on a journey through space looking for both Megatron and the Allspark. Something funny to note here is that all the Decepticons from the first movie pretty much hated Starscream, so every chance they had they just like bullied him, and I find that hilarious. But during the search on an abandoned solar system, the Nemesis found a vessel that bore a striking resemblance to Megatron's alternate mode. Starscream went to investigate it, intending to destroy it, but after chasing off Bumblebee, he communicated with the creatures aboard the vessel who called themselves humans. Starscream then pulled a shadow and basically told them that the Decepticons were peacekeepers searching the galaxy for the Allspark. The humans then told Starscream about a robotic creature that they found on their world. Starscream quickly deduced that it was Megatron who they were talking about. The two factions formed a small alliance and fought against the Autobots. But during the fight, the human ship sank into a cavern. Starscream revealed his true nature and abandoned them. As a result, the surviving humans concluded that neither faction could be truly trusted. Returning from his small skirmish against the Autobots, Starscream told them that everything was cool and that he killed 2 Autobots while he was investigating all by himself. Blackout was unconvinced by the story and challenged Starscream for leadership in single combat, in which Starscream won. Really, Blackout? You lost to this guy? This guy couldn't even squash a single human insect, and you were able to do that. You should at least be able to take down Starscream. Shortly thereafter, Starscream ordered an attack against the Autobot ship known as the Ark. But what Starscream didn't expect is that the humans that he betrayed were now in league with the Autobots, and both forces were eager to have some vengeance against Starscream. This made the Decepticons question Starscream's claims from earlier, saying that everything was fine and that he just killed 2 Autobots. And they also took note of the fact that the human spaceship looked a lot like Megatron's vehicle mode. But unfortunately for them, they couldn't do any kind of real damage to the Autobots since they got pushed back by their combined forces. And now we pick back up with the IDW comics. Starscream team made planetfall on Earth in Afghanistan in 2003, quickly attracting the attention of a nearby US military base, in which they had a short engagement with them and they did manage to destroy them. However, Sector 7 showed up, and being fully aware of the alien invaders, they brought their own weapon of mass destruction to use against them. This weapon was strong enough to knock out Wreckage, one of Starscream's accompanying Decepticons. After destroying the rest of the humans and scanning new vehicle modes, Barricade wanted to take Wreckage with them so they can repair him and use him for the later stages of their mission. However, Starscream said that since he was weak enough to be taken down by humans, he deserves to be left behind. Something that will come back to bite Starscream a bit later.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Later, the Decepticons detected the unique radiation of the Allspark and investigated, deducing that the Allspark was in fact on Earth. And then the events of the movie happened pretty much the same. And now we pick up with the reign of Starscream. In the reign of Starscream, as soon as Megatron gets killed, Starscream gets done wrecking the remaining human jets and leaves the scene quickly. He rendezvous with Barricade, who has been heavily damaged after being knocked off the highway by Ironhide or Optimus Prime, depending on which version you want to go with. Starscream ordered Barricade to keep track of the humans and the Autobots, while he went off to quote-unquote save them all. He headed for the Hoover Dam to retrieve Frenzy, who had first contact with the Allspark and had all the data the humans had collected on the cube. After wrecking the humans once again and having secured Frenzy's body, Starscream returned to Mars, the place where the Nemesis had previously landed on, the place where they had their base of operations. He rendezvoused with Thundercracker and other Decepticons that did not join them on Earth, and he started making plans to go back to Cybertron and build himself a new Allspark using the data he had gathered from Frenzy. However, these plans were interrupted by Autobot reinforcements, led by Cliffjumper, who sought the opportunity to take on a weakened Starscream Starscream and the remaining Decepticons on Mars. The fight was brutal and the Decepticons lost a lot of their forces. However, by the end, the Autobot strike team was repelled with most of its members dying. Starscream, alongside with his remaining crew of survivors, took a space bridge. Yeah, I know. Sentinel Prime's the only one who has the ability to the space bridge, but in the comics, apparently after Soundwave found that the Sentinel Prime was on the moon, he took a couple of those pillars and they managed to replicate that technology to some minor degrees of success. So the space bridge that the Decepticons use in the comics is different and less stable, which will come back into play a little later. So the Decepticons in their ship used the space bridge to go back to Cybertron. Unaware that not all the Autobots had been killed or knocked out, RC actually grabbed hold of the hull of the ship and hijacked herself a ride back to Cybertron along with the Decepticons. Once on Cybertron, Starscream decided to quickly assert his dominance, assuring everyone else that it was Megatron's will that he is to lead now. And he also started demolishing the place, replacing statues of Megatron with statues of himself, just to satisfy his own ego. And using the data from Frenzy, he had the other Decepticons actually build an Allspark replica, which will be powerful enough and strong enough to basically give them unlimited energy and save their planet. Once the Allspark was done building, Starscream used some of his Autobot prisoners as well as a few other Decepticons to power the Allspark, draining their sparks and giving it to the fake Allspark replica in order for it to work. And it was about to work. However, turns out that Dreadwing, who was the head of security on Cybertron after Megatron and Starscream left, planned a coup against Starscream and his loyalists. He has sabotaged the Allspark project and declared open rebellion against Starscream. However, this was interrupted by the Autobots led by RC, who pictured that this was the best chance to take everyone down. So RC, using his sniper rifle, shot the energy reserves of the fake Allspark replica, causing it to explode and killing most of the Decepticons. A huge fight erupted, in which the Autobots, Starscream's loyalists, and Dreadwing's loyalists were all in a three-way fight. However, after recovering from the initial explosion, Starscream was mad. He was so mad, he had no interest on fighting the Autobots. He went straight for Dreadwing, who was trying to escape in the man's own ship too, to add insult to injury. Dreadwing activated the space bridge back to Mars and he managed to escape through it. However, what he didn't know is that Starscream also followed him, and a furious Starscream killed Dreadwing. Behind Starscream, the space bridge exploded due to the Autobot interference on the other side, destroying the Decepticon capital, most of Starscream's loyalists, all of Dreadwing's followers, and the Allspark data. Starscream's reign, similar to the man himself, ended up in complete failure. Shortly thereafter, contemplating his choices in life, having an existential crisis, Starscream carved himself some old Cybertron tattoos to make himself feel more powerful, and declaring himself to be a new man, free from his past mistakes. Shortly thereafter, he received a message from Barricade telling Starscream that there was an Allspark shard still on play that the Decepticons could use. And now we move on to the events of Transformers Alliance. Now, remember that wreckage guy I talked about briefly a while back? So it turns out that he was actually found by Sector 7. Him and Sector 7 made an alliance in which Wreckage will, give them technology, science, info on Cybertronians in exchange for Wreckage being given energy and a place to live. Of course, this arrangement didn't last very long, and Wreckage was eventually deactivated once he went AWOL and tried to get the better of the humans. However, due to a small incident involving the Allspark shard, Wreckage was revived once again, scanned a new vehicle mode, and started getting his revenge on all the humans that had imprisoned him. Starscream, after his big incompetent failure that was his reign and the failure of replicating the Allspark, was pretty angry and wanted someone to blame. So he arrived and accused Wreckage of treason, while Wreckage accused Starscream for leaving him behind and planning to overthrow Megatron. The two engaged into a short fight and they were interrupted by Bumblebee, who just joined the scene. During the fight, Starscream was able to kill Wreckage and he was about to kill Bumblebee until he received a transmission from someone he hadn't heard from in years, being Soundwave, who ordered him to retreat and return to the Nemesis, since it was an order straight from the Fallen. And this basically ties into the events of Revenge of the Fallen. And now we're gonna be looking at the events that happened after Revenge of the Fallen. Starscream was in Zambia, I'm gonna pretend like I know where that is, where he oversaw a group of Decepticons blowing up a series of dams alongside the Zambezi River. He came into conflict with Ness, and Starscream intercepted and killed Beachbreaker, who was trying to hoist Optimus Prime up the Victoria Falls. Starscream kept wreaking havoc in Zambia alongside his Decepticons, Macerator, Dropkick, and Payload. This genius plan by Starscream failed and most of his forces were killed, with the exception of Dropkick, who like a true Chad managed to survive to fight another day. Much later in the novel, Starscream flew to Italy, where he allied with the criminal mastermind, promising him that he will rule Europe once Starscream ruled over the Earth. The Autobots eventually found out about this arrangement and they raided Starscream and Bruno's operation in Italy, where Starscream challenged Optimus Prime to one-on-one combat in a Coliseum. It was a trap, of course, and Optimus fell through a hidden door into a set of restraints in an underground tunnel built by. However, during the fight, the Ness forces are able to help Optimus escape, and Starscream flees off the battle, leaving Swindle, Deaden, and all of his other loyal Decepticons to die by the hands of the Autobots. Starscream then leaves and goes off to pay Bruno a visit for his failure, supposedly killing him, and so ends a beautiful friendship. Next up, we got the events of Transformer Starscream, created Title Hasbro, at the Decepticon camp in Namibia, while Megatron was recovering from his damage in Egypt. Megatron made it very clear that he was very disappointed in Starscream for all his continuing f***ups. His failure to let Sentinel Prime go on Cybertron, his failure to retrieve the Allspark, his failure in Mission City, the failure to boss his reign, the failure of the Allspark replica, the failure to capture Sam in Egypt. Starscream decided that he had enough abuse, decides to leave this abusive relationship, and takes off into the sky saying he's gonna form a new Decepticon empire. But in reality, I'm making it sound more epic than it actually was. In reality, the way that conversation was like, shut up, I'm gonna form my own club but you're not invited.
See, it's like I told you.
Starscream.
Like a bitch.
Shortly thereafter, he detected a Cybertronian energy signature, and Starscream went to check it out, where he met the Decepticon Space Case. Now, Space Case is kind of an idiot, he's kind of equivalent in intelligence to the twins, so Starscream, knowing this, manipulated Space Case by telling him stuff like, hey man, your weapon's so cool, I bet you're really strong.
Oh, thanks.
Hey man, nice technique.
Hey, this is great. Thanks.
Hey man, you really kicked my ass, you should work for me.
Oh, thanks.
And Space Case, feeling appreciated for once, decides to join Starscream, even though he kinda just kicked his ass so he could have Starscream work under him, but whatever, the man's not very smart. And Starscream recruits Space Case as the first member of his new Decepticon empire. Shortly thereafter, we move to the events of the Rising Storm. In the Rising Storm, Starscream basically sets up a base of operations in a random junkyard out in the outskirts of Mexico City. This was before the last night, and I wanna say Starscream did it first. Starscream had actually formed quite a decent operation for himself. He sold Cybertron and weapons to humans in exchange for information and any other valuables the humans could offer him. This was done to create disorder among human civilization, and he had quite a powerful army, including the likes of Barricade, Bludgeon, Breakdown, and even a Decepticon that turned into a small US destroyer. I am not even kidding, he basically had a recolor of movie Depth Charge. However, while Starscream was living the life, finally free from Megatron's abuse, he was contacted by Shockwave, who basically killed everyone on site and made his way to Starscream and told him that Megatron was giving him one more chance to serve him. He could either join him or die right there. Starscream then decided that maybe it was time to rejoin Megatron's club. So Starscream was sent in a retrieval mission to retrieve the unit called Brains, who had escaped to Samway Wiki, which contained vital Decepticon information. Starscream and his boys attacked Sam's college in Washington, D.C. At the beginning, the Decepticons were just fighting against some local police forces and Wheeljack and Mirage who were in the area and ready to engage. However, things got complicated when Autobot reinforcements led by Optimus Prime arrived. Knowing that the fight was lost, Starscream ordered the retreat just as Shockwave's pet driller appeared, giving them a chance to escape. When the Decepticons returned to Africa in Megatron's base, Starscream complained to Megatron that he was just used as bait to lure the Autobots, to which Megatron didn't exactly care for and continued to abuse Starscream once again. And that's the end of the tie-in material. Now, there's more tie-in material out there like the Titan movie comics, which take place in an alternate timeline, a few other pieces of information such as toy bios and other stuff like that, but to be honest, we don't really need to mention those because unlike the IDW movie comics and the novels, they don't exactly tie into the movies perfectly. However, I want to make a small mention to Cyber Missions, in which, Starscream is a recurring enemy for the Autobots there, as they try to steal Energon, they try to steal Vital Nest info. And eventually, by the end of the series, Starscream meets with Megatron, Barricade, Mindwipe, and Bludgeon as they set up on a mission to rescue the imprisoned Soundwave from the Autobots, in which the mission ends in failure and all the Decepticons are sent running, with Starscream being the first one to leave. Naturally. Also, something funny about the Cyber Missions, there's this one episode in which Starscream is trying to steal a bunch of Energon from the Autobots, and at one point Sideswipe throws the Energon card alongside Mindwipe off a cliff. And I find it funny how instead of going after his valuable teammate who risked his life for him several times, Starscream flies past by him and just grabs hold of the Energon, trying to steal it off himself, and just gets immediately blown off by Ratchet. And I think the most shocking part is that he actually survives that explosion. And the only other tie-in material of note will be Unite for the Universe. Now, Unite for the Universe is actually a manga. Yeah, I know, it's weird, but it is. In which takes place after Revenge of the Fallen, like very shortly after Revenge of the Fallen. Like I think it happens like a month or a couple of months after it. Starscream overhears a conversation between Megatron and Bludgeon, in which Megatron promises that if Bludgeon is able to steal the NES files for quote-unquote Project Unite, then Megatron will give Bludgeon ownership of the Earth. Starscream feels very insulted by this, saying that since he's second in command, he should rightfully have control over the Earth and not some random mercenary like Bludgeon. In which Megatron's only response to that is, "Shut up, Starscream!" And a very hurt Starscream does the funniest thing ever. He sets out to sabotage Bludgeon's mission to fail. So he anonymously sends a warning to the NES base that Decepticon Bludgeon and a group of Decepticons were gonna target the base for attack, which led to Bludgeon being confronted by the Autobots and the Decepticon forces to be repelled. While this was happening, Starscream actually entered the base and stole the NES technology for Project Unite. What he discovered was that Project Unite was actually a new type of weapon inspired by Optimus Prime's merge with Jetfire. However, just as Starscream finished gathering this intel, Optimus Prime using Jetfire's parts showed up, ready to tangle with Starscream, but Starscream quickly fled. With the newly acquired intel, Starscream returned to his headquarters and teamed up with Skystalker and Ravage. With their help, he planned to acquire the remains of the Sea Cybertronians to increase his own power. These two Decepticons infiltrated a NES base where they kept the Decepticon corpses and retrieved quite a few of them. Using the schematics from Project Unite, Starscream managed to basically give himself a power-up equivalent to that of Jetfire Power Optimus Prime, and he set out to not only destroy the Autobots but also overthrow Megatron. However, Bludgeon found out that Starscream set him up, and being very salty at what just happened, Bludgeon snitched on Starscream and told Megatron about it, so Megatron got his Decepticons to go after Starscream while the Autobots were doing the same thing. And Autobots and Decepticons for the first time ever sort of worked together to basically beat Starscream. Now, the shocking part about this is that Starscream actually did manage to beat the Autobots and Decepticons working together. His power-up was actually so strong that Megatron couldn't even take him down. And just as Starscream was gloating and he was about to exterminate everyone, Ratchet sneaked up behind him, moved some cables around, and managed to disable Starscream's power-up, which rendered him unconscious. Megatron left Starscream behind as the Autobots encroached upon him, in which then presumably Starscream regained consciousness, got out of the power-up, and fled, which supposedly led to the events of, him meeting with Megatron in the desert, pleading for forgiveness once again, and Megatron being like, "Fine, don't do it again." Now, we'll be talking about the Transformers games since they're mostly adaptations to the movie, but I'll be talking about the Dark World in the game. This game takes place 3 years after the Fallen's defeat. In the game, Starscream was in charge of launching a ship off Earth for whatever reason. No, seriously, it was never explained, and to this day, I don't know what that whole thing was about. While he was managing this, he managed to capture Sideswipe, which was the most impressive Starscream feat he has ever accomplished. Shortly thereafter, Mirage and Bumblebee were sent off to rescue him, and Starscream engaged into a small fight against Mirage, and Starscream Starscream actually beat Mirage, which, after talking about how much Starscream sucks and how much he fails in every single piece of movie media, seeing him land 2 consecutive wins, it's mind-blowing. However, Mirage survived the encounter and managed to free Sideswipe with Bumblebee. Starscream then attempted to take care of the Autobots all by himself, but he was forced to flee. However, the ship he was guarding managed to take off. After a while, Starscream was ordered by Megatron to destroy a shipment of MechTech weapons that were being transported aboard Stratosphere. Starscream, the incompetent buffoon that he is, got caught up in an Autobot trap and then engaged into a fight against some Aerobots and Air Raid. But Starscream managed to kill Air Raid, Silverbolt, Breakaway, and Stratosphere and destroy the MechTech shipment. Starscream getting these many W's this quickly after me talking about how much he sucked so far is really funny and cathartic. When he got back to Megatron, he told Megatron that he had not only won, but he had done better. He told him that he took one of the MechTech samples to use the Autobot technology against the Autobots. To which Megatron's only response to Starscream's greatest accomplishments was,
You imbecile!
So the Autobots arrive, they attack Megatron's base, the Decepticons are forced to evacuate, and Megatron sends Starscream to bomb the Autobot forces from above. Which, why didn't you tell him to do that in Mission City, in Egypt, in Chicago? You know how useful would that have been there? I'm thinking maybe Starscream's not the real problem here. I'm thinking Megatron's probably a very shitty leader. After all the Decepticons managed to escape, Starscream returned to the new Decepticon hideout in Africa, where Megatron informed everyone about Operation Pillar, which perfectly segues into the events of Dark of the Moon. But yeah, that's it for Starscream in other tie-in material. And honestly, I feel like the tie-in material makes Starscream slightly more competent, but just like in the movies, I feel like a lot of Starscream's stupidity just like comes around and screws him up in the future. Though I had to admit, I think the IDW comics did an excellent job like giving Starscream an arc from being a follower to being a leader to failing to realizing he's not good enough to actually going back into service to Megatron and eventually setting out on his own once again, although now learning from his mistakes and having a smaller army, which wouldn't last very long because then Shockwave would just conscript him to rejoining the fold once again. But hey, it was good for him while it lasted. Now it's time to talk about how would I have handled Starscream in the Transformers movie universe. My biggest complaint with movie Starscream, and I think you guys already probably noticed this, is that he doesn't betray Megatron enough. The only real betrayal he does will be leaving him behind in Mission City. For Starscream, I kinda get what they were going for, but for the first movie, I kinda wish he had a bigger presence in that movie, because Starscream doesn't show up at all till the latter half of the movie, towards the end. I feel like we should see, well, not exactly see Starscream from the very beginning, but at least like make it clear that he's the one pulling the strings, that, you know, he's the one in charge what they're looking for, the Allspark. And when he finally meets with Megatron, I would like him to have a conversation that's more similar to the one from the Nintendo DS game. And don't worry, I will make a video about the DS game someday, because that game is amazing and that deserves its own video, and I'm so excited to talk about that one. In which Megatron tells Starscream that he's the only leader and that Starscream should know his place. He has to set up the relationship, and you know, that Starscream's the second in command and that he's kind of like a sneaking coward, not wanting to stand up to Megatron. And for the Battle of Mission City itself, just have Starscream be more of a threat, or like be more competent. Like I get it, you just don't want Starscream to be constantly bombarding the Autobots from the air, because the Autobots will easily, and I mean easily, get wrecked. But just have Starscream, you know, kept busy by the human jets very early on. Like, Starscream is a very good aerial fighter. The Air Force was having a lot of trouble with him, so one Starscream can definitely keep them all busy. That way we don't have to inexplicably show him, you know, going after the Allspark, beating up Ironhide and Ratchet, only for him to, you know, just leave them like that and not take the Allspark. So the problem with Stark is that he has so many chances to do stuff, but whenever he appears, the audience is left thinking, wait, why isn't he grabbing the Allspark? Why is he leaving? Why isn't he just shooting them with missiles from the air? Why is he doing all of this? When Starscream just has so many chances to do stuff, we need to keep Starscream busy, so the only way I can see this working is one of two ways. Either you include an aerial Autobot, someone that, you know, is on par with Starscream and can keep him busy enough so he can get some good action scenes, or at least a justifiable reason for not jumping in. Or alternatively, just have the Air Force be on Mission City early, you know, keeping Starscream busy, which in turn keeps them busy, not being able to assist the ground forces with the Decepticon. And for the end of the movie, have him be the one who shoots down Megatron as a way to, you know, sneakily sucker punch him and assert himself as leader of the Decepticons. For Revenge of the Fallen, I honestly don't have much to say about this one. The only thing that I will add, and this will be a continuation of my changes from 2007, will be that Megatron accuses Starscream of shooting him in the Mission City fight, and Starscream will have to explain himself that he didn't do it, that it was the human jest, that it was an accident, maybe his missiles missed and accidentally hit Megatron, something like that. Just make him make excuses and beg for mercy, you know, just to emphasize the whole coward aspect a whole lot more. For the rest of the movie, he can stay pretty much the same, and I think this also justifies the constant abuse that Megatron deals to Starscream for, you know, his constant betrayals. For the rest of the movie, just keep everything else pretty much the same, but for the Egypt fight, have him be the one that goes after the human helicopters or human jets that show up. Have him be the one that goes after them, you know, again, give him something to do, keep him busy, because Starscream, by default of being a jet, is very powerful and very useful to the Decepticons. So nerfing him or keeping him busy is like excellent way to, you know, not ruin the action on the ground or making the Decepticons seem too overpowered. For Dark of the Moon, Starscream kinda takes a bit of a back seat. I honestly don't mind this. The only thing I will change will be his death. His death's stupid, it makes no sense. My change here will be that Starscream gets blinded, much like what happened in the actual movie. But instead of, like, you know, flailing around like an idiot before having his other eye stabbed, he, you know, uses his chainsaw or whatever, or even his fingers, I don't care, and breaks the rope, the cable, you know, sending Shia LaBeouf flying. Then, since he's a coward, you know, he panics a lot, he would just leave the scene quickly and rendezvous with Shockwave and the other Decepticons being like, "Did you see what they did to my eye? It's horrible, please guys, help me." All panicky and stuff like that. During his ramble to Barricade and Shockwave, we're gonna get that scene where the humans, you know, attacked the Decepticons, and I think it could be very funny if, like, the human snipers just get the other eye of Starscream, you know, just add a bit of comedy in there, like actual funny comedy. And Starscream there, just being blind, you know, starts flailing around more appropriately, and knowing that he's being hit, he could probably be like a hindrance to his fellow Decepticons. Maybe he's like shooting at the ground, causing some minor explosions, kind of like what happened with Soundwave during his fight against Bumblebee. If you take a look at that scene again, Bumblebee didn't exactly do most of the killing. It was actually Soundwave who was also flailing around in confusion. I think it's more appropriate that instead of showing Soundwave like some, you know, bumbling buffoon, it's Starscream the one that does it. It's in character, and at least he gets a fight with Bumblebee. You know, with him being in a panic over having his eye recently sniped and all. And also, Starscream is like the Bumblebee equivalent for the Decepticons. You know, we got Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, and we got Megatron and Starscream. So what better way for Starscream to go out than getting killed by the second main Autobot? So the fight will be similar to the one that Soundwave had with Bumblebee, in which Bumblebee, you know, will take advantage of the confusion to get the upper hand on Starscream. And also, I think that scene works, and it's more fitting with Starscream's character. And I'm guessing if we have, you know, Starscream there complaining about his eye to Soundwave and the others, I guess that means Wheeljack also survives by default, because I feel like Starscream would just delay the execution with dramatics and stuff, giving Brains and Wheelie long enough time to sabotage the Decepticon ship. And that also means the Soundwave makes it to the final battle. So that way, you know, we got more living Decepticons in the final battle, so we can see more interesting matchups, like Depcon fights against the Wreckers, maybe Soundwave can have an extra fight against Mirage and Wheeljack, or maybe Ratchet and Bumblebee. I don't know, it's just food for thought. Like, what Michael Bay did with Starscream is not bad, but you could have done so much more. The changes I'm proposing are not like really huge. It's mostly just about making Starscream a bit more competent, and then having his death be in character. Instead of being apathetic, you know, oh, it's Sam who gets it, it's actually a bit more dignified. And as for Age of Extinction and The Last Night, I don't mind the Starscream cameos there. I think they work, they're fine, they're whatever. They don't really contribute to the movie, so I would just keep those, you know, keep them there. Actually, remove the whole World War II Starscream thing. That just creates a lot of like continuity issues, and I don't like the World War II stuff at all. So just take it out and keep everything else. Everything else is just fine. Now, as for the tie-in comics, I feel like the tie-in comics did the best job with Starscream out of, the comics and the movies themselves. Now, the problem with the movies is that they didn't show Starscream enough to be a backstabber and enough of a coward. I mean, he is a coward, he gets depicted as a coward, especially in TF2 and somewhat TF3, but they didn't do as much as they should have. But in the comics, Starscream is full on a backstabber, he's full on a coward, the Decepticons don't like him, he's a very unpopular leader who thinks he will still be the best leader for some reason. And I like Starscream's arc in the LEW comics, going from being a random nobody, to a warrior, to a servant, then to taking charge, to realizing that he's not yet ready, and then to setting out on his own, before being ruined by Shockwave, who basically told him, hey, you're gonna come back to work with us and you're gonna like it. And Starscream, going back to where he started, by basically being a nobody even amongst the Decepticons. But honestly, the reason why they did that is because, in the movie, Starscream's just working for Megatron again. The comic cannot exactly contradict the movies, since it's a tie-in movie comic. So Starscream has to go back to work under Megatron. So I understand why they did it. My only wish is that we got to see more of Starscream being independent, like what he did, his relationship with his subjects like Bludgeon, who went to work for him even though Starscream screwed him over at that one time, which was very weird. But yeah, I just would like to see more of an independent Starscream in the comics. I think that's the natural conclusion to his arc. As for the Cyber Mission stuff, well, Cyber Missions kinda sucked in general, so I wouldn't even try and change that. And as for the Transformers Dark of the Moon, the game, I don't have any complaints there. I think Starscream was handled perfectly there, and that game serves as a great prequel to Dark of the Moon. Like, what's up with all the tie-in material that's not the movies handling these characters so much better than the movies themselves? These people should have been running the movies, not Michael Bay. I mean, for the game, the only thing I would change is that actually explain the purpose of launching that Cybertron ship off Earth to someplace unknown. Like, to this day, we don't know what that was all about. Starscream's doing a thing. He did it, he completed his task, but don't know what that task was? We don't know what Starscream accomplished? So it's kind of a mute victory if you think about it. As of the rest of the game, I really do love the fact that Starscream's incompetence basically cost Megatron his hideout, and how Starscream was about to
get his soul sucked. I love the scream right before the...
But other than that, for the most part, I think Starscream was handled pretty good in other tie-in material that wasn't the movies. It really just goes to show that Michael Bay doesn't understand or cares for these characters as much as actual fans of the franchise do. But anyways, that's how I would have handled him. That's what I would have changed for Starscream in the movie franchise. Now it's time to move up to the wasted potential rankings to see how much, in comparison to other characters, was Starscream screwed over by Michael Bay. Now, the way this works is that I make videos for most characters in the movies talking about how wasted they were and how much better or worse in some occasions other tie-in materials such as games, comics, and novels handle them, in comparison to how much Michael Bay screwed them over. The wasted potential ranking basically works this way. The higher you are to the first place, it means that you were wasted the most in the movies, and the lower you are, it means that you were not as badly wasted. You actually did pretty good, you actually did something, and it wasn't as bad as some of the characters that are closer to the number 1 spot. Again, I made videos for all these characters. The playlist is gonna be in the comments down below and in the description down below for you guys to check out. But just to do a quick recap, for the wasted potential rankings, at number 1 we got RC, at number 2 we have Shockwave, number 3 Soundwave, number 4 Devastator, number 5 the Twins, number 6 Blitzwing, number 7 the Last Night Decepticons, all of them combined, number 8 Bumblebee Movie Cliff Jumper, number 9 Jolt, and number 10 the Dreads. With 11 being Brawl, 12 being Dino Mirage, 13 Wheeljack, 14 Bone Crusher, 15 Ratchet, 16 Roadbuster, 17 Infernicus, 18 Blackout, 19 Jazz, and 20 Cliff Jumper from Transformers Prime. Yeah, I know, it's kinda weird seeing Cliff Jumper all the way down there, but just go check out that video. I explain why I think he wasn't as wasted as people like to think. But we're not talking about him, we're talking about Starscream. I feel like Starscream, by virtue of being a very popular G1 character, should be pretty high up on this list. Typically, characters that are very, beloved by the fans or have a lot of backstory or history usually go a whole lot higher here. And just like I mentioned in the previous part about how would I have handled him, I think that the movies kinda did a fine job at portraying Starscream like a coward, but they didn't do a good job portraying him as someone who's a backstabber who will betray Megatron at every turn like his character is supposed to do. and that's what brings him down quite a bit. Though I had to admit, the one saving grace for him will be the tie-in material, because I feel like a lot of the tie-in material do carry this version of Starscream. They actually do put in the legwork to actually make him look like a genuine threat at times, and someone whose own incompetence gets him into a heap of trouble, kind of like the Transformers Prime Starscream. So I definitely do believe that Starscream deserves a place in the upper 10 of the wasted potential ranking. But unlike Shockwave, Soundwave, and RC, who didn't get to do anything and they're pretty popular and beloved Transformers characters, Starscream at least got some action. Granted, in the first movie was just like the final battle of Mission City against the Jets, in Regis of Funding was a small skirmish against Optimus, and in Dark of the Moon, his death was just embarrassing. He still didn't get that much action. Sure, he did stuff and was pretty present throughout the franchise, but I will only say that 30% of his screen time was him actually doing something useful. So I'm really having a hard time deciding where I should place him. But unlike Cliff Jumper from the Bone movie, The Dreads, and Jolt, I feel like his character was not like exactly what it should have been. Like, there are traces of it, of, you know, that cowardly, backstabbing, you know, moron that we all know and love, but at the same time, the movie just didn't do a good enough job portraying it. But he wasn't as insufferable as the twins. He was just weird, you know, with the whole spitting thing and like all the other weird stuff he did. And unlike Blitzwing, at least he lasted longer. But his death was just so embarrassing. I think out of all the characters here, he probably had the most embarrassing death of everyone, even more than Blackout getting shot in the balls. So I'm gonna place Starscream at number 6. Above Blitzwing, and everyone else gets pushed down one ranking. My reason for putting him here is that the twins were annoying. They were our main characters. They were set up to be comedic relief, but they didn't accomplish that properly. At least I can say that Starscream accomplished his task. Blitzwing was just supposed to be a scary Decepticon to take out Bumblebee's voice and, you know, make the Decepticons look very dangerous, and he did that. And Starscream also accomplished his goal of, you know, just being the buffoon of the Decepticons who is mildly threatening, and it's just an extra recognizable figure for us, the audience, to represent the Decepticons. And like I said, while RC, Shockwave, Soundwave, and Devastator didn't do much of anything, Starscream at least has some stuff going for it. Granted, it's not a lot, but in comparison to them, I think that Starscream has a bit more going for him. So that's why I'm gonna place Starscream firmly at 6th place. Which honestly, it's been a long time since I had someone this high up on the rankings. So yeah, this is my final ranking for Starscream. To be perfectly honest, he gets carried by the legwork that the games, the comics, and the novels put on his character. Like, in this wasted potential scale, I'm not just ranking Starscream from the movies, I'm ranking him in general from the Bay universe. How did all this media, how did the movies, everything, you know, together mold this character? And that's overall how I feel about Starscream here. But yeah, 6th place for everyone's favorite Dorito. Not bad, Starscream, not bad. I've seen worse, unfortunately. Here's hoping that with the reboot they actually do Starscream some justice. But yeah guys, that's Starscream's wasted potential. Let me know if there's any other characters you guys want me to cover in this series. I'm thinking of covering either Ironhide or Jetfire. I haven't decided quite yet, and I do get quite a few requests to cover some characters and to do more wasted potential videos. The reason why I haven't been doing them as much is because, well, I kind of lost interest in wasted potential for a long time. But now, since I see that there's some people requesting it coming back, and honestly these videos are pretty fun to make, just, you know, going through memory lane and remembering all the weird funny stuff that happened in between the movies, I decided to go back to it. I'll try to make more wasted potential videos more often. No promises though, because I'm very bad at keeping those promises. But just know more wasted potential videos are being worked on right now. And if you guys want me to do more, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and, you know, do all that jazz. I might go back and make some more handmade drawings for the previous episodes just to get the series a more consistent style. But I'll see what I do there. As always guys, do you guys agree with my positioning the Starscream in the wasted potential rankings? Do you think he was a wasted character in the movies, or do you think he was handled perfectly in the movies and other time material? If there's any other characters you guys want me to cover, feel free to let me know in the comments down below, and I'll get to them as soon as possible. No promises though, because I'm very bad at keeping my promises and keeping a consistent upload schedule. So yeah, as always, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will be seeing you guys in the next video. Stay safe guys. Anyways guys, before we go, shout out to our amazing patrons: Xavier the God, Stitch Productions, Scrub Lordo, Allspark Studios, Epic Nin, Low Racer, Transformers Gears and Brawn, that's quite a long name, Up Nation Reviews, Joshua, and our newest patron James. And an even bigger shout out to our even bigger patrons, Jordan the Great and X23, who donated a amount of money. By donating to my Patreon, you get quite a few rewards. Get a shout out to you and your YouTube channel in the description down below. You get to collab with me in some of my videos if you so choose to. You can request some artwork from me, get exclusive early access to some of my videos, and some other projects I'm currently working on in the background. And I'm constantly updating the Patreon with brand new rewards and new content for you guys to enjoy. And a bunch of other stuff I plan to make public in the future. Keep in mind this is 100% optional since freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Thank you guys so much for donating, it's much appreciated, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Stay safe guys.